welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I say it every time, and I'll say it again. It's really nice to have you with us here on the program to share a conversation that we're going to have with our very special guest. We'll get to her in just a moment, but I want you to know that what we have available for you today is a program that comes your way on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com, podcasting at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, too numerous to mention at this time. We are also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. We hope that at the very least you will select a notification. But if not, select subscribe. If you could just at least do notification. Don't have to subscribe. First of all, I will tell you that SoundCloud, we are we're at 99,300 some odd listens thus far. Now that is through all of the outlets. On YouTube, I have 121 followers or subscribers, if you will, but a lot more, many more people are actually watching. And what else have we got? We've got an opportunity for you to be a part of the work that we are doing. If you'd like to support the work we're doing, we would be gratefully appreciative. It's a financial support if you can. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And when you go there to provide us with some support, whatever the amount, we ask that you put in the email address, or they will ask this of you, to whom shall we send this contribution? And they will say, and you will say, richard@richarddugan.com. Once again, richard@richarddugan.com. And finally, if you could take time to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. We may even talk about that on this program too. You can call it your intuition. You can call it your gut feeling. I call it my friend who has been with me since I came here some 63 plus years ago. And the plus has to do with months, but we won't go that far. I'm not 3, but 63. And we hope that you'll spend some time listening to that still small voice. It has never steered me wrong. It's frustrated me because of the direction it wanted to take me, but I chose to take the direction, and I'm glad that I did on a couple of occasions, because if I hadn't, I would be looking back going, oh my God, if I'd only listened to that voice, and it would have been a whole lot better if I had. So we hope you'll do that. Now we're going to ask you to listen to our guest. Our guest is Esther, and it is Kuznetz, and she is with us. She is the president of the Star Financial Solutions, and we are going to talk about entrepreneurism. We're going to talk about finances. She's been on her own. She has, on her own. She was on her own in her teen years. She owned apartments by 17. Really? I was lucky if I owned a very expensive model that I could build, like a B-52 or a model of the Titanic, maybe 1/4 scale or something like that. She's had many jobs, as have I. And apparently the Grateful Dead has been a rather interesting influence for her. And I want to thank you, Esther, for joining us here on the program. It's really a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
It is something that is difficult for a lot of people to understand, yours truly included. And I'm going to share very briefly, because I tend to go on and on. Well, you already know that, because we're already 4.5 minutes into the program and I'm still talking. I was a paper boy in 8th grade and all through high school. And I was delivering the morning paper, Arizona Republic at that time. Should have started with the evening paper, but hey, you live and learn. And this is what basically happened on a financial level. I would go out, I'd go out collecting, the money and so forth. Remember, I don't know if you remember the little square tabs that you would give the customer. That was their receipt. Yeah. And I loved going out and seeking subscriptions from non-subscribers at the time. As a matter of fact, I was so good at it that I won numerous trips to Disneyland. I've still got the certificates for high sales. However, as I mentioned, I love building model airplanes, planes, trains, automobiles, to coin a phrase, and then spacecraft and so forth. And I got a little out of hand, to which at one point, while I was in 8th grade, believe it or not, I was fired for mismanagement of funds. Well, not long after that, they did rehire me, not because I showed any propensity for management of funds, but it stayed with me, not so much as a trauma, but as a lesson.
Mhm.
Do you find that most people who deal with just their own personal finances are struggling with those same kinds of concepts, if you will, of not only just management of funds, but of setting up a saving? My mother keeps asking me about my retirement plan, and I keep telling her I don't have one. I mean, I don't plan on retiring. I love doing this too much. So I don't have a 401k. I do have a can full of a large cocoa, hot chocolate can from Costco that's filled. It's empty with cocoa. It's filled with coins, but that's not going to last me a day.
No.
Talk to us about this aspect. And I know you focus primarily on supporting and helping women who very rarely, if ever, my father handled all of the finances for the
Yep.
family up to a point until he wasn't able to some years back. I did it for my first wife, and I do it for my present wife. Please share with us your insights.
Well, and that's the whole problem that I see, is that women aren't used to running their own money and managing their finances. They don't have a lot of vehicles out there where they can turn and talk to other women. Unfortunately, in my industry, only 16% of registered financial advisors are women. And you talk about your first job as on a paper route. And most of us our age did something like that, where I grew up in downstate New York, about an hour from New York City. The boys all had paper routes and the girls went babysitting. But at very young ages, we were already bringing in our own money, not a lot, but something.
Mm-hmm.
And we never had the education of what to do with that money, of how to save money. We had allowances. And I know, like for me, at a certain point, if I wanted something that wasn't necessary, I had to work for it and buy it myself. A lot of kids these days don't even have that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a real problem. And I tell women that you really need to take control of your money and your financial future, because, as we know, in most times women are going to be in charge of their own assets at one point or another. If they are married, they're either going to outlive their husbands, they're going to get divorced, whatever it is. And if their fathers are still running their money, or if they went with their father's financial advisor, a lot of times, or even their husbands, they don't have a rapport with that person. They don't connect with that person. And you need to really feel comfortable with the person that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
We know that women see money different than men. We know that women communicate different than men. This should not be a big newsflash. And so, it's simple things. Like there's been studies that when men go to a bar, they sit at the bar and talk to each other while they're watching TV. When women go, they sit at a table and actually look at each other. And that's just, and it's not all the time, but, if you're going to, in general terms, we communicate differently. Yeah. Women see money differently. In my own experience doing this for as long as I've been doing it, women give to charity more than men do. Women are more concerned with helping out their children and especially their grandchildren. Men are spenders, women are savers. It's just, we are programmed differently. And the thing about women, and what I say is that it's not that women can't understand this. I mean, nobody's born knowing it, but if you work with somebody that has the right education and background, they can translate and can explain it. But the difference is that women aren't interested in something like this, and they've almost been taught that it's over their heads or whatever. So I put it with when a lot of women, me included, are driving a car and I hear something, I turn the radio up. Then I don't hear it anymore and it's fixed. And then maybe a week later, I'll hear it again. I turn the radio up again. And then I'm on the side of the road and I say, oh, shoot, I should have done something about that noise rather than turn the radio up. And a lot of times, women and men also, they ignore these signs until it's too late and you're on the side of the road. And it's like, what do I do now? And that's what I try to instill in people. Find somebody that you can communicate with that can translate for you, and you will be much more comfortable when, education is power, and you can take control of your own financial future the way you want to do it.
Well, there was a wonderful, wonderful movie with Kevin Costner in it. And the word figures was in the title, and I can't remember the full name, but it had to do with the Apollo program. You might probably remember this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just sitting here going, look, I watched this film and I'm going, are you kidding me? You are expecting these women to do for you what it is that they are doing, and yet you will not give them their due. And women, this is one of the things that I learned very early on in school. And it was, I think maybe in biology, maybe it was in biology class, where they said that boys and girls learn differently, that girls actually, they are I don't know, they intellectually, they mature earlier than boys. Boys are full of energy, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, okay. And I hung on to that concept for a long time until I got out of school, high school, especially in the late 70s. All of a sudden I started hearing about this ADHD and all this attention deficit, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying it isn't real. All I'm saying is, wait a minute. You just told me throughout school that boys and girls learn differently, that boys are full of pep and vinegar throughout their young years, and girls, they mature a little bit more quickly, and so on and so on and so on. And now you're trying to normalize. See, that's what I perceived it as. They're normalizing young people,
right?
Children specifically.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going, what are you doing? They do not have attention deficit, whatever it is, whatever the acronym and the letters you want to use. They are who they, because if I had grown up in the 80s, if I was going to school in the 80s, I bet you I'd be on one of those mood altering drugs. Hell, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, and I was taking the usual stuff. And then at one point, because I was having what they referred to as anger issues, they put me on, Lexapro to, as they said, level out my moods. It didn't make me a zombie, but it was supposed to, I still got upset and frustrated and angry, but
yeah,
it wasn't. Plus the fact that not long ago, and this goes to the metaphysical aspect, I had my gallbladder and a gallstone removed. Now, the gallbladder, from a metaphysical standpoint, along with the liver, are sort of the seats of anger and frustration and so forth. Well, guess what? Out it came, and I noticed an interesting change in me. Before, if I spilled a glass of milk, I'd go on and on and on and on. After the gallbladder gone, okay, let's see, where are the paper towels? I got to clean it up. I kid you not.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
seems to me that's part of the problem that we have in terms of being able to learn more about finance. And this is one of the interesting things that I find so perplexing and sad. And this has to do with the whole student loan thing. If kids had been taught in grade school and in going into high school, in other words, you have a class on finance, not talking about stocks and bonds and that kind of stuff,
Right.
but talking about,
How to
okay,
balance a checkbook, perhaps?
if you still have one, yes, how to balance a checkbook, how to understand APR if you're going to
Yeah.
get a credit card, and most importantly, if you're going to college and you're going to apply for a student loan, you need to know what you are getting yourself into.
Right.
And
Right.
do you really need a university degree, or could you do it at the local community college? Is there a vocational school that specializes in that is cheaper? Okay, and so forth. I went to broadcast school in 1980. It was a 6-month course. It was only like $3,200. And I was making the payments for a couple of months until my parents came over and said, "Hey, where is your coupon book? We want it. We are
Mhm.
going to take over," because they paid for my sister's university. They went to most of my sisters went to ASU. Okay. So you kind of know where that's going.
Yep.
Do you think that we have so diverted and or distracted ourselves with other stuff, and we're not going down the road that we just talked about, so that we don't get into these messes that tell us, "Oh, I can't open my own business. I'm too deep in debt." I heard this one gal this morning on the news saying that, yeah, in 2 months, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have to start paying my student loan again and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, what are we doing? Are
Right.
are are our kids our priority? It doesn't seem like it, because they're doing nothing about the school shootings, although it's now happening in everywhere else too. We don't seem to care about our kids because we're not teaching them the things that will help them, like what we're talking about. Go ahead, and I'll
Well,
shut up now, okay?
well, you and I aren't that far apart age-wise. So I was in high school in the 70s too.
Okay.
And they didn't do any better job then than now. And I think where it's missing is what I just said. They don't realize that we all learn differently. And so they try to put everybody in a box. And I will tell you that in my industry, which is, and again, I have been in this industry since 1983. I've been a registered advisor since 1996. I've been around long enough to watch what's going on. And in the training programs in the big firms, they teach their new advisors how to sell to men. And I have even, they didn't even understand that women have their own money and they're in charge of more assets in this country than men are, until about, the early 2000s. And even then, I go to these conferences and they have the breakout, how to sell to women.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in there as wallflower and I say, well, first of all, you never sell to women, you sell to men, you work with women. And they look at me like I have three heads. And I said, well, women hate to be sold to. I said, men, you can sell to. They're used to that. They're comfortable with that. Women want to understand what they're getting into. And once they do understand, they're much better investors than men ever were. I will tell you, I've had men call me from a bar saying, buy 100 shares of this, and then not remember the next day, call me and say, did you buy stock for me last night? And women have never done that. Women come into my office and they have questions, which, by the way, they will not ask if there's a man in the office, in the room.
No.
So they will ask me all these questions that they have. And it's not the percentages and the performance and all this, but more like, how am I going to get to my goal? What's the difference between growth and value? Why, I have all these stocks and everyone says that this is like a really aggressive portfolio, but it doesn't feel aggressive to me. And can you explain why that is? And it's translating the talk that we all hear. And they're like, well, all the men understand this. Why don't we? And I said, well, They really don't. But it's just like, the old joke, when a man is lost, they won't ask directions. They'll drive around for an hour until they find it, hopefully. And a woman will stop right away and ask directions. Women want to understand. Women want to have the translation. Men, on the other hand, they are way more trusting of somebody to do for them. When they get that hot tip, they are more trusting that they're going to make money on it. And that's what how it's how we're programmed from when we're little kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Esther
Kuznetz.
Kuznetz.
Yes.
Esther Kuznetz. I apologize for messing that up. I'll get it right from here on in. Kuznetz is my guest, and she started in the financial industry as a secretary on Wall Street in the 1980s. Oh, I remember the 80s, and no, were they fun. She moved to Sarasota, Florida in 1991 and joined a small independent firm where she was reintroduced to the financial industry and truly found her calling. And after 13 years at the firm, it was time to go out on her own and work with clients her way, which is what we're talking about. And she joined a large firm in 2008. But after 6 years, decided that being an independent advisor was more her style. And so she started Star Financial Solutions. And Esther Kuznetz is my guest, and you, my friends, are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're talking about money. We're talking about finance. We're talking about, if you're looking at retirement, an interesting thing that I'd like to talk about is just that, because for different reasons than most, I applied for Social Security, my retirement, but I applied for it early. As I said, I'm 63. So that means that people are going, oh my God, you're not going to get full benefits. Oh, be quiet over there, because I'm getting my retirement for a particular reason early. Now, I'm only going to get it for 5 months out of the year. That's fine. It's because I'm still working. That's fine. But as I said earlier, my mother, constantly has asked me on numerous occasions about my retirement plan. And I said, well, the only retiring that I will do is putting new tires on my vehicle. Okay. That's retiring to me. They're going to have to peel my cold, dead carcass off the console. Okay. And so forth, because I took my late father's advice, and I found a job that I love doing. And I say this with all respect to my father. I did not get stuck like him, and he didn't. I mean, maybe for a brief period of time, but then he went back to junior college, ladies and gentlemen, and got his computer programming degree. Now, Esther, he did that in the 70s. Okay. Right. So, it was fanfold paper and punch cards. Mm-hmm. We had lots of drawing paper at the house in those days. I was spending money hand over fist for models. And I have to say that my pusher, if you will, was a man by the name of John Fiore. He owned a business, a mom and pop business called Fiore's Hobby Haven. It was at 16th Street and Thomas Road in Phoenix. It's no longer there now, but it was then. And I was buying models, and he would give me special deals and so forth. Sometimes he didn't, and he made me pay full price, which was okay. It's his business. He's got to stay in business.
Right.
This whole aspect of retirement in a true sense is fairly new for not only the United States, but also globally, let's say over the last 1,000 years or more. This is like, who has anything laid up for when they stop working? But prior to the Industrial Revolution, you worked until you died, or you worked until you couldn't anymore, and you better have a bunch of kids so that they can step in. Let's talk about that aspect, because you already know my story. I don't plan on retiring.
Yep.
Is that a mistake?
Neither do I. Well, you're talking to somebody. My grandmother retired at 100. And the only reason why she quit working at 100 was because the bathroom was upstairs and she couldn't walk upstairs anymore. And she wasn't working full time, obviously, the last 20 years of her life. And in the end, she was working maybe 2 or 3 hours a day for 2 or 3 days a week. But it's what got her out of bed. And that's why she lived to 101. But so I see nothing wrong with working as long as you can. And it used to be, don't forget, we used to have pensions, which you don't really see anymore. If you had worked for a company or for the government long enough, you would retire at 75 and you die at 85, or you'd retire at 65 and you die at 75.
Mhm.
Well, we're all working a whole lot longer, and that's what the problem with Social Security is that if you retire at if you start taking at 62, which you can, what if you live to be 105, which a lot of people are?
Mhm.
And that wasn't the way it was when all this stuff started. Well, now there are no pensions. It's 401ks. You got to put in a little on your own and plan for this. And if you're going to retire, which I have nothing against retiring,
Mhm.
I just don't think that people have this headset that you have to retire.
Yeah.
And my gig is, no, you don't. As a matter of fact, if you keep working, you're going to make more money. You can do more stuff. Do what you love at a certain point. And whether, as you get older, you start working less hours or whatever, if you want to have a real happy, a good life in your later years, there's nothing wrong with working and making that extra money, and then you can take more vacations or live a better life. If you retire early and decide you're not going to work anymore, especially if you don't have the assets to back that up, because let's not forget, Social Security was never, ever supposed to be the end all. That was never supposed to be what supported you through retirement. It was supposed to assist all the assets that you had been saving since you had your paper route,
Yeah.
and people forget about that. And it's not that much. And even, if you do as you chose to retire early, which is your choice, and there are certain people that's a good choice, and there's certain people that's not a good choice. But you are leaving a bunch of money on the table if you are to live past a certain age, which give or take is somewhere between 83 and 87, depending on all kinds of things. But,
Mhm.
so let's say you retire, you take Social Security at 62 and die at 69. Well, then you made the right decision. But if you should live to 100, well, maybe you've left a lot of money on the table that you could have been taking all those years. But unfortunately, we don't have an expiration date on our butt, so we don't know what that date is. As soon as I find somebody that does, I'm going to patent it, because it would certainly make my job a lot easier in helping people plan their retirements and do all that.
Yeah.
But especially now, as we get into a recession, I question whether we're already in one in certain areas. A lot of people are having a hard time already. And I had a conversation this morning with, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm taking Social Security, but it's not enough. I need all this money for my retirement. And I'm going, well, you can't take that much, because you will be out of money
Mm.
in a couple of years. This is not sustainable, and you cannot do this. Go get a job.
Mhm. Well, I'm actually leaning more towards a retirement plan. My retirement plan is the lottery, and I'm on my way because I bought a lottery ticket a few days ago, and I just checked. I won $4, so I'm on my way, ladies and gentlemen, to a great retirement.
Be
Do
careful
not
with
use
that.
do not use the lottery as a retirement plan. You are
And
listening to Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Esther Kuznetz, and we are talking about finance here on Where Else? Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Esther, I want to thank you for being with us. This is really interesting. By the way, you can see her twice a month on the Suncoast View, where she educates viewers on investing, financial planning, and other related topics. You have a passion for working with and empowering women by helping them take control of their financial future so they can focus on what really matters and have confidence regarding their financial and retirement incomes. To that end, if women, and of course now my mother, since my father's recent passing, now she's obviously taking care of the finances. Although I did find out that my sisters are stepping in because they are also, I have had four sisters. I've also lost my eldest sister last year in March. Anyway, I found out that they're all helping her out, specifically financially, as far as being able to manage everything. Because, my mother, she's going to be 89 on the 17th of September. And, she's still going strong. She's still having a great time. Of course, there's no telling how much longer she wants to be here. That's the other issue. But you mentioned something about outlasting, say, the benefits, or, making the wrong decision in that regard. And I will tell you that if my plan bears out, I will have made the wrong decision, because I want to live to be 100. I have to outlive my great grandmother on my mother's side. She lived to be 100. And she got that letter from the governor for a centenarian. So from that standpoint, you could say, yeah, Richard, you may have made the wrong choice. But the thing is, I have thrown away more money over my 63 years. I mean, my second wife and I, we bought a timeshare. Where? In Hawaii. Never been to, my wife's been to Hawaii, but I've never been. And then we had to do a quick claim deed in order to get out of it. And we were only a few $100s shy of paying it off, but it was the maintenance fees every year that were killing us. So there goes $7,000 or $8,000 out the window. And the list goes on of all these things. And we've all done that. I mean, I'm not the only one. We've all thrown away potentially hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over the years.
Yeah.
So when you talk about leaving a lot of money on the table, I just look at it philosophically and say, and so what else is new? Because I can't. And of course, by the way, one other thing, you're talking about Social Security, and of course, there people are trying to get rid of it. They're trying to say we don't want it, because now they're looking at it as an entitlement program.
Yeah, that'll never happen, though.
No, it won't. But
are the people that get Social Security, and all our politicians want to get voted for, so it'll never go away. Right. What they do, they're very sneaky.
Yeah.
So what they did, and I believe it was the elder Bush that did it. I could be wrong. But they changed the way that they figure out the cost of living adjustments, and they took out energy and food, because of course we don't need gasoline or food to survive. So
no,
that doesn't count anymore. So where the cost of living might have gotten a little higher because of those two things, when they go up now, it doesn't go quite so high. Yeah. And they do, and as we all know, they're jacking up the ages of when you can take it, when full retirement ages, all this stuff, which they really have to do because we're living longer.
Right.
But that makes sense.
Right. But the other aspect is I've been hearing, but I've been hearing since the 70s. I was a teenager. I've been hearing since the 70s. Well, you better make plans because Social Security won't be here in the 80s. Then in the 80s, won't be here in the 90s. 90s won't be here in the first 2000s. And it's like, you lying sacks of, you know what?
You go.
Give me a freaking break. You're just manipulating us.
Yep.
You're just playing games.
Be here. Fear sells.
Yep.
And they're putting fear into. That's all they're doing. It will always be here. And as I said, the reason it will always be here is those same people that are trying to scare you into voting for them because of all this, they're getting voted for by the same age group that the other guy is. And it's the age group. It's us.
Yeah.
50 to 80. That's who votes.
Yeah.
And they're the ones looking at Social Security. It's never going away.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about that, but it certainly is something that you have to look for. And if you're not a high earner on your way up, you need to take that into consideration also, because it means that the Social Security you're going to get is not going to be as much, so you're on your own. That's only to help you,
Yeah.
but you're not, unless you start saving money and doing the 401k and having other investment options and investment programs that you're working with, you're not going to have enough to live even the same life in retirement, depending on when you retire and how you retire, than you're living now. And that's what's important. It's not important to be rich and to do more, but if you're not working, you're spending more.
Yeah.
And
There's a
people don't realize that it takes more to live once you stop working. And unless you have that saved,
yeah.
you're going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And, I was homeless at 19 for 3 days. It was horrible. I talk to people that are in their 70s that have been overspending and not saving their whole lives. And I have to tell them, you have no money, you need to get a job. And they're like, oh, we don't want to work. I'm like, well, you cannot live like this. You're going to be homeless in your 70s and later unless you get a job. And trust me, it's not a happy lifestyle.
And that's one of the reasons why I feel so fortunate that at the age of 19, and I just celebrated my 44th anniversary of officially getting into the broadcast industry. If you're going into it for the money, you better be damn good, like a Larry King, or you forget it. You better love what you do. And I do. And I haven't quite gotten to the Larry King level yet. I'm working on it. But that is one of the other things too. Just because you're in your senior years, or depending upon where you want to see the cutoff, as far as middle age to senior, I've heard it as early as 55. But anyway, just because you have completed your quote unquote official work period doesn't mean that you don't still have a purpose in life. It doesn't mean that you don't have a contribution to make. Let's talk a little bit about that aspect of it. You've been through the ringer. I mean, you just mentioned about, being homeless for 3 days at the age of 19. But what I don't understand is what happened in 2 years. You owned your own apartment at the age of 17 in high school as a junior. And then all of a sudden,
I think you misread that though.
Oh,
I had my own apartment when I was in
okay.
school. I didn't own it. I had my own apartment. I was working 5 jobs and going to high school.
Wait a minute. 5 jobs. How did you go to Sky? There are only 24 hours in the day.
Anything I could. I was working full time. I had part-time jobs. I was working. And I was going to school and going from school to this. I was babysitting. I was working at Jamesway, which isn't there anymore. I was doing whatever I could to make a buck.
These were all legal, right?
Well, yeah, most of them.
Oh, wait a minute.
I was behind the bar a little bit, but that was back in the 70s. They did things were a little bit more shady. Yeah, not shady, but
I get you.
I should say, as far as age and drinking and stuff. But I did a lot, and I worked all the time. Had my own apartment, and I did end up graduating high school a year early. I went to my guidance counselor. I was like, I got to get out of here. I can't afford this. I got to work.
Right.
And so I did. And then I got a temp job on Wall Street eventually in the mergers and acquisitions department.
Well, let me ask you in regards to education here. Obviously, you graduated early from high school, so you went through the first 12 years, or in your case, 11. It has been said, and I mentioned earlier about this whole student loan thing. I think that in and of itself is a scam that continues to generate the fear. But did you feel that you should have gone to college, or that not everybody is cut out for college? I only went to a vocational school and then 3 semesters of junior college, which, by the way, I loved. It was a lot of fun. Back in the late 70s, early 80s. Do you think college is for everyone? Did you think college was for you?
Well, at the time, that was all I knew, was you go to high school and then you go to college. Both my parents were teachers. And I was in New York. I was in the Regents program, and I was acing out everywhere. I actually ended up getting a couple of partial scholarships. And in the end, I'm the one that slipped between the cracks because
Mm.
I did not have a happy family life. I was living on my own. My father was still claiming me on their income taxes, so I couldn't get a loan. And I don't see there's anything wrong with getting a loan and then paying it off. You need to, as you said before, if you're going to get a student loan, they need to explain to you what you're getting into. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Back then they did. I knew if I went to college, I'd have to get a loan and I'd have to work my way through. And I had no problem with that.
Hmm.
And I knew that once I got out of college and got a job, I'd be paying it off for as long as it was. And I had no problem with that. So I think that's where the issues are. The other issue is the interest rates on these college loans
Oh,
have gone way out of control. And it wasn't like that back in the 70s. All of that being said, my life took other turns and I didn't get to go, which was a big shock to me. It was a big shock to me that I could actually make a living without a college education, because it was drummed into my head that if I didn't go to college, that I'd be bagging groceries for the rest of my life and I'd never get anywhere.
yeah.
But that was a whole nother issue. And the reality is I did learn that if you work your tail off, you do what you got to do and you actually can support yourself, and you can do okay. I quickly learned though also that with my knowledge and background, there were certain areas where I could make more doing the same thing, and so I headed for that. I quickly realized that what I didn't want to do, even though it was a great life, was doing beadwork and leather work and living behind, in the back of the shop and having an outhouse and having a car that never worked.
Hmm.
Which is why I, eventually went into a temp agency and said, get me a job that pays where I know how to type.
Hmm.
And I started at Goldman Sachs in the real estate mergers department for a year, and then I went to Dean Witter. It was Dean Witter Reynolds at the time over at the World Trade Center. And I was in mergers and acquisitions in the mid 80s, which was quite an amazing thing to be in. I learned a lot. I hated most of it, but anytime it was from the commute in to being there, being a woman in this industry, especially then, was horrible. And but I learned. I mean, I asked a lot of questions and I learned, and I knew that if I wanted to get anywhere, this is what I had to do. And sure enough, I will tell you that if it wasn't for those years back in my 20s that I hated, I wouldn't be here in my almost 60s, absolutely loving it and working my passion in a very different way than I ever thought I would be, and helping a lot of people.
And that's one of the things that you do. Now, you focus specifically on women, and we want to talk about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, along with our very special guest. No, I won't. I was going to say we have with us Moneybags, Esther Kuznetz, because I have a money can. It's full of change. And you have a passion for working with and empowering women to help them take control of their financial future so that they can focus on what really matters and have confidence regarding their financial and retirement income. And I want to talk about that in particular. As I said before, I had four older sisters. I beg your pardon. Two older sisters, two younger, although I'm sure the younger sisters think that they're older than me and smarter, considering the fact that all four of them have only had one husband. My brother and I, well, we've had at least two wives. I'm on my second, and he is, I guess, headed for number three. Or sticking with girlfriend kind of thing rather than getting entwined. So from the standpoint of intelligence, I would have to give them, my sisters, that accolade. I would have to tip my hat to them, ladies, because you've done well. You've done well. And what's nice is I have four more brothers. I don't consider them brother-in-laws. They even told me at my father's memorial, or after it, that they would be there to take care of my mother with whatever she needed. And I said, man, it's so nice to be in a family of five brothers and three sisters.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the majority. But
Finally.
Talk to us about steps that you take women through who maybe just want to get back on their feet. Maybe they did go through a divorce, or they're a widow, and so forth. They're on their own. Or they want to, and this is B, they want to start a business, but they really don't know where to start. Or C, and I know these are three different things, and you can go down the list if you'd like briefly or expand. We've got a few moments here. Or C, it's time for me to retire. I am alone. I love people. And so I may travel, maybe take cruises or whatever. And so I want to be able to do that. And maybe they're still working too. So they're able to maybe still do that. And I'm going to throw one final caveat, not D, but in terms of retirement, how late is too late? They were telling me even at the age of 55 that I could still start like a 401k or something like that while I'm working. And I would still have a substantial amount by the time let's say I waited until I was 65 to retire, kind of thing. So those are the three, A, B, and C, if we can maybe just touch upon those a little bit. And I know that's a lot, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Let me tell you a story.
Please. Love stories.
So, and I do have male clients too. So let me get not just women, but most of my clients are women. I do have some male clients that I love. But I had a woman literally brought to my office. Two of my other clients literally took her by the hands and walked her into my office. Probably about 15 years ago. She was in her early to mid 70s. And she was retired. She was in a situation where in certain cities and states, if you have a certain retirement and a certain pension, you don't get Social Security because they made some kind of deal with the government, but you have a large pension. But she got divorced, and then her ex-husband, took half her pension, and now she was living off of half of her pension and had what was left, which wasn't much, over in another account somewhere. And the advisor over there had already told her, you're going to be out of money. And when her friends heard that, they brought her into me, and I looked at everything and I said, when he said that, did you think that was okay? And she said, well, what was I going to do? And I said, okay, here we go. A, get a job. You need to get a job. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's full-time or part-time. You cannot live on this money. Go get a job. The money that she did have, we refigured it and got her some income off of that to help with her retirement. So now she's pulling in money from a part-time job, which, by the way, she loves. And she's taking less money from her assets and whatever she's getting from her pension. Within about a year, she had saved up enough money to actually take a vacation and go on a river cruise. And she ended up going to Israel, and she ended up doing all these things because she had a job. She has thanked me so many times that I made her do this. And her ex-husband actually passed away a year ago, and now she has a full pension and she's doing great. She's in her 80s now. So it, again, it's that a lot of people don't know where to turn to get the information they need. She went to somebody who hung a thing on the wall that called himself an advisor, did not have the experience in the background that he needed to work with somebody in her situation, and also did not communicate in the way that she needed to be communicated with. And so when you put together all those things, I was able to get her back on her feet, live a better life. She did have to go get a job in her mid-70s, but she did, and she loved it. And she goes on all kinds of vacations. Even still, she's got a vacation. She's going on another river cruise in a couple months. So a lot of it has to do with that communication. And when I hear about your sisters helping your mother, and I'm thinking, well, I hope that at least one of them has a financial advisor that has the background and education to help them all. Somebody that they can ask questions to and get the correct answers and have things translated for them so that they can make the right decisions. And a lot of it's just making the right decision. Like when you made the decision to get the timeshare, maybe that was not the right decision at the time. And there was nobody there to say, listen, for somebody that never goes to Hawaii, maybe you should get a timeshare somewhere where you do go.
Uh-huh.
If that's the way you need to go, that's a little cheaper, that you're going to actually use and make money on. So it's a lot of these things. We are put in boxes by different people and businesses and whatever, and none of us really want to live in a box. We live outside the box, and you need to have people that think that way sometimes, depending on what your questions are.
Yeah. Esther Kuznetz is my guest. She is la presidenta of Star Financial Solutions. Starfinancialsolutions.com is the website, which we will be linked to, and we hope that you will seek her out. I've got some good information here from her just in this short brief time as we have been here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and finances. Let's see. I'm thinking the three things you really don't want to talk about at the dinner table are what the heck are they? Politics, sex, and money. And actually, money is the least of the volatile issues in that respect. But let me ask you a definition, if I may. From your perspective, your experience, what is money?
To me, it's a way that you can live your life a little easier, right? So we all have all these problems, and it goes, what is rich? I was asked that question. What is rich? Well, it's different things to different people, and money is different things to different people. However, it is a tool that we all need to enrich our lives and to make our lifestyle what we want, or at least a little more comfortable than it would be without it. And so it may not be the end all. Money does not make us happy per se, but it can take away some of the things that take away the joy.
Let me ask you one other question in regards to finances and money and investing and all of those kinds of things. There was a story that I love telling because I feel like I'm living it. Again, this is more on the metaphysical level. A couple of guys get together. We'll call them Bob and Frank. And they go out to breakfast one day, and Bob reaches into his pocket when the bill comes and he pays the bill, and a little gratuity, has exactly the right amount. Then a few weeks later, they get together and they have lunch and they're having a great time, great conversation. Bob, he reaches into his pocket, pulls out exactly the right amount plus gratuity, and they go on their way. Dinner a few weeks later, same scenario, great conversation. Only this time Frank says, "Hey, Bob, first of all, thank you so much for paying every time we go out to eat. I really appreciate it. But I wonder, how is it that you always have the exact amount?" He says, "Let me tell you a story." And he says, "I was in my garage and I was going through some stuff, came across this bottle, and I rubbed it. It was all dusty. I thought, that's the kind of neat looking thing. And all of a sudden a genie pops out, says, 'You have one wish.'" I'm trying to get through this quickly. And he says, the genie says, "You have one wish, but you can't wish for more wishes." "Okay, well, let me think about it. Can I get back to you?" "Sure, I'll be here." Comes back a few days later, says, "I know what I want. I want to have exactly what I need when I need it, in terms of, finances." There's a part of me that feels as though that's the way I'm living. I don't have a huge bank account. I mean, I'm closer to zero than most. Yes, paycheck to paycheck is one way of looking at it. But by the same token, I'm still here. I'm making the payments on the things that, I've acquired, but I'm still here. And I realize that in our economy, in our society, that isn't the way you want to live. But there are people who have hit the road, traveling all over this country, getting supported, doing a little work here, a little work there for the money, and they're pretty darn happy.
The problem is the pothole. The problem is what happens if, God forbid, you get hit by the bus and now you're in the hospital, and maybe your insurance covers some but not all. Maybe you don't have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if, like I live in Florida, we just had a hurricane. FEMA doesn't give you money right away all the time. You need to have something extra for that. And when it's the stuff that you don't, you never think about, that you get blindsided with. And that's where the problem lies. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, or you have exactly enough, what happens if something comes up that you were never expected in a million years? And then it's like, oh, I didn't have enough for that.
Right.
And that's
Okay.
a lot of what I do with people, which is expecting the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that there's something over on the side. There's different buckets, and there's a bucket for that. There's a
Right.
bucket for the thing that you never thought would happen.
Exactly. Esther
So,
Kuznetz is my guest, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for being with us here on the program. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Yeah, I'm talking to you who are listening and watching on SoundCloud or YouTube, or listening to the broadcast on the internet at richarddugan.com. We are so grateful for your doing thus, and we hope that you will continue to do so as we continue talking with our very special guest, Esther Kuznetz, and we're talking about money and finance, and yes, she works with men as well as women, but her focus, her specialty, shall we say, is working with women. Do you have you, not necessarily personally, because we already know you are successful, but have you the stories? Maybe give us one story of a woman that you've worked with, or a man, whichever you choose, who might be able to be labeled as the story from rags to riches. Maybe they aren't millionaires or billionaires. They're not, Bill Gates or whoever these other guys are, Elon Musk and so forth. And, I find it interesting when they talk about billionaires, it's always the men's names. I know there are female billionaires out there, but you don't hear about them. Yeah. Anyway, so what about that? The story that really impressed you, touched you, and so forth, that you were able to facilitate that, and they've come out the other side just doing fantastic.
Well, let's talk about my very first client then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So 1996, I just got my Series 7, and here I am. And my first client, so I was working for somebody that had an independent office just like mine, and a friend of his had a business, and he says, okay, Esther, you got your Series 7, you know about mutual funds, go over there. And he wants to do a retirement plan. He's got 8 employees. Just go over there and set them all up for a simple IRA plan for their business. So I did. The very first client that comes in, and the first thing he says is, I don't want to take any risk. My father owns a bank. Banks are safe. I don't want to have any risk. This is 1996.
Yeah.
So I said, all right. So we got him into a government bond fund, I think. It's like, this is government bonds backed by, the faith and credit of the United States. Our government's good. Let's do that. Okay, fine. Fast forward to 2023. He's still my client. His 2 children that we started UTMA accounts, they're both doing well, working, have their own families. They're my clients too now. He is looking to retirement, although at this point they keep making him, giving him choices that he can't say no to. So he's still working there. He's come close a few times, and he's worth well over $1 million. Needless to say, he does take on risk now. He understands it better. In all these years, he's been putting away like crazy his whole life. Him and his wife both put into their 401ks, and we've rolled money and we've done things. And he's worth well over $1 million now. And anytime he wants to retire, he can do so comfortably in the way that they have become accustomed. Take a couple of vacations. They love to go on cruises. By the way, there's plenty of money going to be left over for their kids, and they've already planned for that. They, and that's, and when we first started, he would have been 33, 34.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and here we are, and he's doing great. His wife just retired.
Wow.
So we still work together, and that's it. You really do need to work with somebody that can bring you through all of that. And so where we didn't start with any risk, and he wasn't making a whole lot on his investment at first, we slowly and gradually moved things up. And as he made more money and had more to invest, it was a lot of explaining to him the differences in what he can do. And now you're in a different level. We can do this with your money. And after we went through a couple of market crashes and bull markets, and now he's pretty comfortable with it, and he's got a lot of money that he can retire with comfortably.
Esther Kuznetz is my guest, and we're talking not high finance, just talking finance. At
Yeah.
whatever level you want to take it, you go right ahead. You want to take it to the cellar, go right ahead. You want to take it to the top of the skyscraper, go right ahead. We're just trying to help here. And I would think that when a person reaches that level that you just described in the story, there must be that must be one of the greatest stress relievers. And I know that you don't know what their health conditions are per se, although over the years, I'm sure they may share a little here and there. But I would venture that this guy, as he progressed upward in, in this financial plan the two of you worked out, his health, the stress must have really helped ease to the point where his health actually may be improved.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've seen it too. When people come to me, new clients that have been losing money for a while, and they're like, really freaked out. And then we get everything to where it really needs to be. And things start growing and things start falling into place. And they understand more, because I tell them, listen, when the market goes down, you're going to lose money, but you're going to lose less. And that's what we're planning on. And when it actually happens, like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. And so, yeah, absolute stress kills. We all
Mm-hmm.
know that stress kills. And so, if I could take some of that stress off, and financial stress is a huge one, then yeah, everything else falls into place as well. And I've had clients where I started working with, and they retired and they were able to make it through retirement and live their lives. And it's like the plan works. It worked. It worked for these people. They've passed on, their kids have gotten, the money that was, that they inherited. And now they're my clients. And they're like, well, you did really great for my mom. So hopefully you'll do as well for me. And a lot of it is the education. Again, having somebody to go to when you're ready to make a purchase and they say, you know what, you don't need a brand new Audi, but you can go to this car place where they sell used high-end cars and get something really nice for less money that works just as good.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, and it, for a lot less money. And so that's also where a good financial advisor might come in, and help you out. But
That
that's
also seems that also seems to be a big issue in regards to someone's finances, that they want all these things. And is that a conversation that you have, not from the standpoint of talking them out of in the direct sense,
right.
but having the conversation where, all right, you need to think about this. Your long-term goal is A. Your short-term goal here is B. And I get that you love it, whatever it is, car, boat, house, blah, 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 blah. But that does not help plan A, long-term goal.
You cannot afford this. You are living outside your means, and that's what it is. And most times when people come to me and they're leasing a car, I know they're in trouble. Leasing a car most of the time is financial suicide for most people. Not everybody. There's people that they get tax deductions and they're making a lot of money. But I see so many people leasing that car that they want that they can't afford. And they're paying way too much. And I have somebody now that it's literally put them into financial jeopardy. And I've been telling her for years, stop leasing the car. Go buy a used whatever. And, and I had a client recently, my car is dead. I need to buy a car. I'm going to go get a brand new Kia, whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, how much you spend? Go to my friend. You go buy a used car from him. I bet you won't even spend that much and get a better car. Sure enough, she got a 2-year-old BMW, exactly what she wanted, for I think exactly the same amount of money with a better loan.
I could tell you stories of recent.
Done it over
Yeah.
a Kia.
Yeah, I could tell you stories of recently the car situation that we've gone through just in the last 6 months. I'll share that with you off the air. I'm curious. One other final question before we begin the wrap up portion of our program: has bankruptcy ever been part of the conversation where you've gotten to the point with this person where, you know what, that is really the only solution left to you? Or because I've done it twice. All right. And the last time I was thinking about it, I said, no, I'm not going down that road. And I did a debt settlement program with a company. And I have to tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. I should have done it back in the first bankruptcy or the second. By the way, I knew I can look back on those two. I know exactly when the wrong decision was made that sent me down that path those two times. But has that been a conversation at all?
Well, usually by the time people are going through bankruptcy, they've left me long before. There have been many times that I've tried to keep people from going there, and they don't listen to me. And then I find, and they just spend everything. And I tell them, do not take money out of your IRA. They can't take that in a bankruptcy. If that's where you're going, do not do that. Or, you need to get a second job, and they don't do that. They don't do the things that I tell them they need to do in order to avoid it. They don't listen. And then all of a sudden they do what they wanted to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And a year later, that's where they end up. By that time, they've taken everything out of the accounts, and they've left me. And, there's really not a whole lot I can do. Once you're there, there's really not a whole lot anyone can do.
Yeah. And your service is not free. They pay you. This is always what's frustrated me. For example, Gordon Ramsay, his programs, restaurant kitchen or kitchen nightmare rather. And they call him, bring him in, right. And then they complain about his advice. And I'm going, wait a minute. He didn't just walk in. You called him. They called you, Esther.
Yep.
And they're paying. I mean, your service isn't free.
They don't. Well, I don't charge for that. I make money on, the investing and stuff.
Sure.
And I choose to do it that way. But if you're going to come to me and you want me to be your advisor, you should listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and when they don't, that's, I know stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I tell people, when we encourage people to go within and listen to that still small voice and follow the promptings. Absolutely. I used to seriously say, I say it jokingly, tongue in cheek now, because I don't want to offend anyone. Look, if you're going to listen and you're not going to follow the promptings, why are you listening? What's the point? Why? Esther Kuznetz is my guest, talking about all these wonderful financial issues here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Esther Kuznetz is my guest, and I want to thank you. By the way, we encourage you to go to starfinancialsolutions.com. Star Financial Solutions, it is plural.com, will be linked to that website. I have 3 final questions that I like to ask all of my guests, and I'm going to ask those of you in just a moment. But first, I want to thank you folks for listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We are also on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We podcast these programs via SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube. There's so many locations. I'm going to have to cut that down to 3. YouTube, where you can watch and you can listen to these interviews. And I hope that you'll at least select notification. if you don't subscribe. Again, it's not about the numbers for me. It's about getting the information out for you. And I'll be very excited when we roll over this vehicle to 100,000 listens. That'll be very exciting. We're about 700 away. So as of this conversation. And so I'm hoping that you will do that. And also, if you can support us financially, we would be so gratefully appreciative of that. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when you go there to send us support, they're going to ask you for an email address to whom you're going to send that support. And it is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And then, of course, as we've already mentioned, talking, listening to that still small voice. And I'm curious with people who do spend time going within, meditating, etc., and listening to that still small voice, how big a role do you allow your intuition to play in this process when you are working with people?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
100%. I believe in what you're saying. Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't listen to that smaller voice and listen to my intuition. I have intuition about people. I have intuition about the markets, things that I've studied, things that I've experienced. I think we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely that plays a big part. When I see somebody making the wrong decisions, and that's, I see what's going to happen. Isn't that a part of that? And that's how I can help them if they want to be helped. And
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. If you don't listen, you're on your own, and then things, you might end up with a timeshare in Hawaii.
You can use that as a selling. So you can use that as a selling point down the road to people. Yeah, I knew this guy. We had a conversation, and he and his wife bought a timeshare, and they got rid of it, only owing another maybe $200-300 because they wanted out of the monthly the maintenance fees. I have 3 final questions that I want to ask you that I ask all of my guests, and I thank you so much for giving us this time on the program. And I hope that people will go to starfinancialsolutions.com. I need to slow down is what I need to do. But I'm so excited about this whole conversation. First question is, first of all, how did you come to the last name? Because you mentioned to me before we started that Kuznetz is not your given maiden name, if you will, or birth name.
Right. So when I obviously had problems at home, and I never got along with my father, and so I didn't want his name. And so I decided to change it. And my mother's grandparents, when they left Russia and Ukraine, it was Kuznetz. And so I took that name, I added a couple of vowels, and Kuznetz was born. So actually in that area, it's like Smith. It's Kuznetz is not an unusual name. Here it's a little bit more unusual. My brother said if you use 2 Z's, it's good Scrabble word.
I like that. I like that. So to that end, who is Esther Kuznetz?
Oh boy. I'm very independent, very type A. I am very spiritual, which is something that your show lends to. I want to help people. I actually, in high school, I wanted to be a guidance counselor when I grew up. And then when I couldn't go to college, I couldn't be a guidance counselor. And now I'm pretty much a guidance counselor. So I just got there a very, very different way. I am a deadhead, which might be where you're going with that. Maybe, maybe not, because I know you know that. Mm-hmm. Which, the Grateful Dead situation always says, if somebody needs something, you need to give it to them. Mm-hmm. And you need to be there for each other. Mm-hmm. And that's who I am. I'm here for people. I want to help people. I want to, empower women. I mean, that's the whole thing. Women need to be empowered, mm-hmm. whether they can do it on their own or they need somebody like me to work with them and help them be empowered. It's so, so important.
What is your life's purpose?
What I'm doing. My passion is working with women and getting them to where they are comfortable and empowered. I've taught scuba diving to women. I used to ride a motorcycle, and I was the president of a women's motorcycle club. All these things that are male dominated. Being a financial advisor is male dominated. And I'm here to tell women, listen, you can do this. You can do
Mm.
this and you can do it better. But, and I'll be here to help you whenever I can. And that's my passion, is getting people into their own, and being able to do what they thought they never could do and doing it better than they ever dreamed of.
And finally, what was your best day?
Oh, I've had so many. I've had so many. That's a hard question. Maybe the day that I bought my first house, which I thought I would never do. I never in a million years thought I'd own my own house, and I did when I was 30. I bought my first house. Moving into that was so empowering. The day I opened my own business, and it was so scary, and I was starting from scratch pretty much, and I did it, and realizing how far I've come. They're all good days. But probably those two were the most empowering and the two best days of my life.
Well, Esther, again, thank you so much for sharing your story and the information about finance with our audience, with myself. And I can't thank you enough. And hopefully we'll have you back again to talk further about this conversation, because it needs to be talked about on a regular basis. So again, thank you.
And thank you for having me. I can't wait to come back.
We will. I promise you we'll have you back. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
I hope that you folks will come back to listen to and watch Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. And until then, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, I'm glad you're happy. And Doug, or shall I call you Smokey, I'll see you down the road.